welcome to the playoff edition of the A to Z Sports Big Orange Podcast. I'm Charlie Burris. That is Zach Reagan. Wherever you listen throughout this world, we thank you so much for listening to us. We talk about everything Vols every week here on the Big Orange Podcast. If you want to listen to that on the reg, go over to the A to Z Sports Podcast Network feed on Apple or Spotify. When you get there, rate, review, download, but make sure that you subscribe, because if you do that, you won't miss our shows when we drop them on Mondays, except lately we've had a weird schedule because we've just been going live after the playoff reveals. That's what we're doing right now. It's on a Sunday. But if you subscribe, you won't miss them anytime that we drop them. They'll just be delivered right to you. So also go over to the YouTube channel, A to Z Sports Tennessee Vols. Subscribe there, but definitely make sure you hit that notification bell, because if you do, you'll be notified whenever we go live. And in that case, you can come, hang out with us, comment, be a part of the show. It's always a great time. We have an absolute blast. And then you can also watch a little, VOD afterwards. At Charlie_Burris, at Zach TNT, at A to Z Sports, Facebook.com/A to Z Sports, A to Z Sports.com. For all the stuff that Zach writes. All righty. So, not the best outcome for Tennessee in this playoff bracket reveal. While at the same time, the entire thing is just conflicting, Zach. At the same time, I have to look within myself and go, hey, we are in this thing. Ohio State is beatable. They just lost to a clown team at home, and you got to go play them at home. That's nice. I got to talk myself through it a little bit, because if I don't do that, I have to think about how Tennessee got screwed out of a home playoff game. But, whatever. That's okay. This entire format is completely stupid, and they're probably going to change it next year, and it would be better, and Tennessee would have hosted a playoff game with a different format, and that's the way that it always goes for Tennessee. And why do these things always happen, Zach? I don't know. But what's up, man?
Yeah, it's pretty much what we thought it would be today, regardless of the result yesterday. I feel like it was probably going to end up being this way, even if Penn State got blown out. And you're right, there's a lot there with there's a few teams, Tennessee, Penn State, Ohio State, Notre Dame that have similar arguments. And I know some fans will disagree and strongly think that it should be one way or the other, but all those teams have decent arguments, and it's because of the way the sport's set up. There's just not enough similar opponents to compare. Everybody's playing different schedules. The setup, like you mentioned, Arizona State gets straight to the quarterfinals, and they weren't even in the playoff if they didn't win on Saturday.
So stupid. It's so stupid.
It is truly absurd, and then the whole thing with like Georgia, they go and win their conference championship. Their quarterback gets hurt. They're in a similar situation as Florida State last year, but they're automatically in, and because the other auto qualifiers were just not good. No, I want to say not good teams, but not elite teams like Boise State, Arizona State, and Clemson, who was in the mix there. They get all the way up to a number 2 seed. So it's the way it's set up. It's fair for Georgia. The committee didn't screw up there, but those Florida State fans are like, hey, we were in a similar situation last year and we got left out completely. There's just a lot about it that's flawed, and hopefully moving forward next year they fix it. But it is what it is for this year, and Tennessee's going to have to go to Columbus, and they're going to have to win a big game on the road to be a national champion. And I think ultimately, to be a national champion, that's something you have to prove you can do. So, yeah, I wish Tennessee was hosting a home game, but at the same time, if you want to be the last team standing, you got to go show that you can win a game like that.
Yeah, it's exactly like, it's crazy how much this has happened to Tennessee. Like, genuinely, it always feels kind of stupid complaining about this stuff, but it feels exactly like the North Carolina Music City Bowl. Where something so stupid happened to Tennessee that the rules of football were changed.
Yeah.
It's happened other times also. And you just go, really? Why can't these things happen and Tennessee not be on the brunt? Like, it's good. This learning period was always going to happen for the playoff. because I mean they probably should have thought through it on the front end. I don't know why they didn't, but regardless, I don't know why anybody thought that the league where the best team, in the Big 12 is thinking Iowa State. I don't know why they didn't think that through, giving them an automatic qualifier, but far be it from me to criticize these people. This growing period was going to have to happen. Why Tennessee has to be in the direct brunt of the truck that gets run over by this thing? That's, it's just too good. It's just, we couldn't avoid it, could we?
And Tennessee didn't really, let's be honest, Tennessee did not help themselves as much as they could have. The loss to Arkansas.
Beat Arkansas.
I get tired of hearing about the Arkansas loss because a lot of other teams have some tough losses as well. It happens. But outside of that loss, there were in a lot of games where the offense didn't do what it was supposed to do or what we thought it could do. If they blow out Kentucky, maybe, if they blow out Florida, if that game against Oklahoma, if they win that game by 20 points, 24 points instead of 10 points, maybe the committee is forced to look at Tennessee a little differently. So, I mean, there are things that Tennessee could have done to help themselves to not be in this scenario and to definitely host a home game. It's just like Alabama being left out and the arguments you hear, they beat Georgia and the strength of schedule. It's like, well, you lost to Vanderbilt for the first time in 40 years. You lost to an Oklahoma team that wouldn't have been bowl eligible otherwise. It's, sometimes you just got to take care of your end of the deal and not let the committee even argue about it or have a chance to knock you down a peg because of something on your resume. And that's part of playing in the SEC. It can be tougher on a weekly basis, but you still got to take care of business against the teams you're supposed to beat, whether it's on the road or at home, and you won't have to face these questions.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's also particularly frustrating because you say you could have done this, beaten this team by more and done these things. Well, it's not like Ohio State held up any kind of their end of the bargain. They lose to a terrible Michigan team. They got beat by Indiana. They lose to Oregon. The teams that they did beat, I mean, they hung on for dear life against Nebraska. It's not like they went and just smashed all these other teams, and yet we get told, I mean, you're not wrong. That's not wrong. Tennessee should have just beaten Arkansas.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, well, why didn't you just hold up your end of the bargain? Well, Ohio State didn't either. And yet I'm the one getting told because they have the brand prestige or whatever, even though they, everything that's happened with Ohio State where they can't win a big game for the last 5 years, all of that has happened also. But like all that, it's just when do you get over that hump is what I'm wondering. What does Tennessee have to do to get on you get the benefit of the doubt train? I feel like Tennessee's basketball team is starting to get there because they've been good for so long now. It's starting to be like, okay, they're Sweet 16 every year, Elite 8 every year. Like this, you're sort of like getting over that hump. The baseball team, I think, is there where they're sort of juggernaut status. In football, like, what do you have to do to where it's finally you cross over to be like, okay, they actually have brand prestige again? Because Tennessee had it in the 90s. I mean, you had it for that. I don't know what it'll take.
I think you got to win. I think you got to win a playoff game or two, and you got to be in the playoff a couple of years in a row.
Win this game. Win this Ohio State game.
Because, look, over the past 15 years, Tennessee's not done a lot to earn the benefit of the doubt. They've really just come back around these last couple of years. So while we think it's good enough and while we think that stuff in the past shouldn't matter, you should look at each season, kind of in a vacuum. Like, it doesn't matter what happened 22, 23, 18, whenever. All that matters is this season. I think with the Ohio State and Penn State thing, I think the argument's there on both sides. The one that really, though, when you kind of look at it, is Texas. I think that's the one that's not getting talked about enough. No. Because at least Ohio State has the win against Penn State. And Penn State, they hung in there better than I expected against Oregon. I can understand them not falling drastically based on where the committee had them. Wherever you think they should be in general is one thing. But based on where the committee had them, I understand them not falling dramatically after that 8-point loss to Oregon. So Ohio State has a good win against Penn State. Texas doesn't have that at all. Like, they don't have any good wins like that on their resume. They have 2 losses. Yes, they're both to Georgia, but you haven't proven that you can go beat a contender. And, Tennessee's best win is Alabama, who's now outside of the playoff, but they're right on the cusp. It's a better win than Texas has. There's an argument there. that's worth listening to. It's like, what do you value more, the losses or the wins? In some situations, the committee seems to value the wins. In other situations, like for Alabama, when they're trying to make the argument to try to get them in. In other situations, it seems like the losses mean more, and the inconsistency with that, I think, is what troubles a lot of people when it comes to the decisions that the committee made. It doesn't feel like there was the same set of criteria to evaluate every single team, because it's like, well, if Penn State's in over Tennessee, you're giving them, value because their losses aren't as bad as Tennessee's, and I don't know if that's the right way to go about it.
And crazily, I mean, this isn't going to get talked about because they're the number one team, but really, the team that got completely screwed last night was Oregon. I mean, they go out there and they beat Penn State pretty comprehensively. They almost coughed it up there at the end, but really, I don't know that game was ever truly in trouble. And how did they get rewarded by beating Penn State? Well, they get the hardest path of any of the 4 byes easily. I mean, it's Ohio State or Tennessee, and that's how they get rewarded. And Penn State gets to play SMU. I mean,
which I could see SMU winning that game, though. I mean, it wouldn't.
I could too. Yeah,
just like I could see Clemson. Who was the 5 seed? Texas, Clemson, and Texas. I mean, we spent all this time talking about the 5 seed and how that might be the best spot to be in. Because of all that talk, I fully expect Clemson to somehow win that game and just nullify that whole discussion.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. And obviously we're going to do that. We'll get into this actual Ohio State matchup and kind of the draw in general, and probably our thoughts on everything else that's laid out in this playoff. I mean, like I was saying, you do have to take a step back and go, hey, Tennessee is in this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's incredible. And you didn't backdoor, you didn't pull what Alabama just tried to pull and like backdoor your way into it, even though you didn't deserve it. Like you did this thing, and you're there and you can show up and you can win the game, and that'd be great. And we'll talk about it after I tell you about our great sponsors, Zen Sports. Zen Sports just picked the grand prize winner for the November big game sweepstakes, but they are running it back in December with the big game sweepstakes College Edition. This time, instead of the big game for the pros, you'll have a chance to go to the very first big game in the new college football tournament with a grand prize of $10,000 cash and 2 tickets to the biggest college football game of 2025. You know, the one in Atlanta. The ability to earn entries on every bet you place in December. You know, it doesn't get any better than this. If you don't win the grand prize, don't worry. You'll also have a shot to win one of 10 smaller prizes. They bring you $1,000 towards any college football playoff game in 2025. What are you waiting for? Head to zensports.com/sweepstakes for a full list of rules and earn that $100 no danger first wager that we've been talking about all season long. You can see the banner right there below me on the YouTube video. Zen Sports, gambling just got better. If you have a gambling problem, 1-800-889-9789. No danger wager. Limited to plus 500 odds. Qualified terms and conditions apply. A qualifying wager for a wager entry must have minimum odds for any leg in the entry of at least -250 or worse. American odds for clarity. A wager of -251 does not qualify. Go to zensports.com/sweepstakes for contest terms and conditions. Must be 21 or older in Tennessee to bet. Okay. So Tennessee draws Ohio State, and there's no interesting history with Ohio State. You played them once in a bowl game. Tennessee won. It was Tennessee against the Eddie George version of Ohio State. And really, that's a classic bowl game that I think a lot of Tennessee fans like kind of hang a hat on, that it was a really good win for Tennessee, as good as it can be in a bowl game. So historically, you're 1-0 against Ohio State, as whatever that might mean to you. This is really interesting because Tennessee has played a lot of bowl games against Big Ten teams, and they've just smacked them around all over the place. Northwestern, Iowa,
Nebraska.
I guess Nebraska, except I guess at the time was Nebraska in the Big Ten. I think that was that pre-Big Ten. It doesn't really matter.
Remember.
They're in it now, and so you've had a lot of success. I mean, all of those you won relatively easily. And there's been this through line with Tennessee fans, I think, where it's like the SEC is way above the Big Ten, and it's the big show versus kind of the side show, clown show over there in the Big Ten. Like they have a couple of good teams, but that's about it. And now you get the chance to actually play one of those two good teams, and that is really interesting. And at the same time, probably the most interesting thing about all of this is that Ohio State just took probably one of their, maybe not quote, like one of the worst losses in the history of their football program, but it's got to be close to the most demoralizing that you could possibly have. I mean, just you're already kind of on the outs with this coach. Everything comes down to this, and he comes in there and says like some of the worst. What was the quote? Some of the worst days of his life were losing to Michigan and the death of his parents or something. He said something like that. I was like, holy cow! Like, yeah, this is crazy, and so they're in this odd spot of hating their coach, and they kind of like, I think they're resigned to the fact that he has a lot of really good players, but he's maybe not an actual great coach himself, and the baggage that comes along with that. And now you get to play them at their place in a playoff game. And it's a lot of storylines, and not the ones that I probably expected if Tennessee was going to be playing in a playoff game this year. But this is a fascinating spot for Tennessee, and I think in some sense maybe opens up a chance for Tennessee to take advantage of the sort of emotions Ohio State's going through at the moment. I don't know. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I see some of that too. I mean, it's going to be a tough matchup. You're playing a talented team on the road that has some of the best players in the country. Like you said, they are going through a little bit of turmoil right now. I mean, the end of that Michigan-Ohio State game was disastrous. It was a ugly scene on the field, and then Ryan Day just kind of standing there like just watching all of it go down. You saw a lot of that happen on Rivalry Saturday across the country, and a lot of coaches stepped in to either stop or whatever. They didn't just stand by and watch like Ryan Day did. It was a very odd scene. But it's maybe Kirk Herbstreit was talking about during the reveal show, and Herbstreit was the whole ESPN playoff reveal show was a horrendous watch. By the way, it was
so bad.
It was just a bunch of politicking from Nick Saban and Herbstreit on how the system should be changed instead of just talking about the matchups. I don't know. Maybe we're doing a little bit of that too, but we're not the ones revealing the rankings on national TV. But Herbstreit kind of alluded to, like, what if the fans start booing Ryan Day and the team at that game? Like, he mentioned that as a strong possibility. A former Ohio State player, not a random fan that's in the comments or on Twitter or something, like an actual person that played football there, thinks that's an actual possibility. So, maybe that will be a situation where they won't be kind of fully focused on winning a national championship because the focus is so much elsewhere that it plays into Tennessee's hands a little bit. You can't count on that. You got to show up and play your best game of the season to advance. You haven't played well on the road, especially at night. You got to go prove it to advance in this game, and you just can't assume that Ohio State is going to have any sort of internal issues. It'd be nice if they do from Tennessee's end, but you just got to go play your game and not worry about that.
Outside of internal issues, I think where you could take advantage of it, regardless of if they're having locker room issues or whatever, is exactly what you're saying. I mean, Tennessee's defensive line has been their biggest strength all season. That defense has held up in a whole set of games that without them you probably would have lost. And let's say that defensive line is crushing Will Howard. I mean, how many did we talk about this? How many games has Tennessee played where the opposing quarterback finished the game? Pavia did, to his credit. Pavia did finish the game against Tennessee. Milroe did. And I guess Carson Beck did. Am I thinking wrong? I think that is the only 3 times the opposing quarterback has finished the game against Tennessee this year, because they have either hit them so hard that they are injured, or they are playing so badly that they get yanked. I'm trying to think.
I don't know if there's. There might be another in there. I don't know, but it's been quite a few times for sure.
Yeah,
but either way, it just shows that Tennessee's defensive line, they get pressure on the quarterback. They hit the quarterback. It can be a problem.
And if you do, and Will Howard is, just it's not working. And like if they do what they did against Michigan, where they're trying to like play bully ball, which is not their identity at all, or at least it shouldn't be. I don't know what Chip Kelly's thinking there. I mean, the Boo Birds are going to come out. They're ready. They're primed. Because let's say, as Tennessee fans, we have experience in what Ohio State fans are going through at the moment to a degree. And
I will say,
you hit a certain point where fans are ready to go, F this guy. What are we doing? Get this clown off of our sidelines. We're going to lose this playoff game. And then the whole mood in the building can get pretty nasty pretty quick. And you can take advantage of that, whether the internals are okay or not. I think maybe I'm wrong.
No, I think that's an excellent point, actually, because you take the locker room stuff, and who knows what the status of that is. You take all that outside of the equation. Clearly, fans are a little peeved at Ryan Day. Some of them, if they lose this game, they're gonna call for him to be fired, right? Like, I think that's pretty well accepted. So if Tennessee goes up 10-0 real quick, like they did against Georgia in Athens, the difference in these two games is I think Ohio State might lose the crowd in that moment and not really get that momentum or that energy back in the building unless Tennessee, throws a pick six instantly or does something to get them back into the game. Whereas in Athens, that didn't bother the Georgia fans at all. I mean, they were still in the game just like they were at kickoff, just like they were when Georgia took the lead. That 10-0 lead didn't really take the air out of the building. I think you've got the potential to do that in Columbus, and we'll see if that happens or not. I mean, Tennessee's still got to go play well. Jumping out to a 10-0 lead or a 7-0 lead even is not going to be easy. But if they can pull that off, I think you can really ride some momentum in that game.
Well, and notoriously in his time at Tennessee, night games, which this is going to be a night game, I believe it's going to be 8 p.m. They've already announced.
The Saturday, not the Friday.
Of course, it's going to be prime time. We all knew it was going to be because Tennessee draws a massive crowd, and it is what it is. And notoriously, Heupel so far has had a tough time with night games. You did win one this year in Oklahoma, with night away games. You won one in Oklahoma, then you lost at Arkansas. I would say you played, at least for a half, you played a game at Georgia that was surprisingly good. A couple of the best drives you had all season were at Georgia. Very composed, and a couple of really solid drives. And, Dylan Sampson was big on those. And I think you have a chance here. Ohio State's run defense hasn't been perfect. But I think this is the spot where in one fell swoop, you could take that entire aura off of Josh Heupel. I mean, if he wins this game, a playoff game at night in Columbus, Ohio, how could you ever complain again? I mean, maybe he'll go on in subsequent seasons to lose road night games again, but this would be the ultimate road night game win. And I texted y'all this. You know what this feels like? As I'm a Titans fan, unfortunately, sadly. Sadly for me, a longtime Titans fan. And a few years ago, the Titans had the chance to go into New England in the playoffs, first round of the playoffs. They played at Gillette, and they essentially ended Tom Brady's time in New England. It was a big, people were picking the Patriots to win, and Titans were sort of this plucky upstart that looked good during the season, and you're not really sure if they could actually pull it off. And they went in there and they just stuck it to New England, and Tom Brady never played a game in New England again after that. And it kind of feels that way, but for Ryan Day here, where you're on the precipice of this era at Ohio State ending potentially if he doesn't win a national title here, I think, or at least make the title game. And you can go in and kind of wrap it up for Ryan Day. Pretty, shut the door on that guy and potentially shed that monkey off of Josh Heupel's back. And it's a very exciting opportunity. I would put it that way. I think you really have something here that could be a special night for Tennessee if you can come prepared.
Yeah, but I think Tennessee definitely has to prepare as if Ryan Day and this team are going to shut out the outside noise and really stick together and make a statement and erase a lot of that outside noise and say, you know what, like our backs against the wall, we got a little bit of a chip on our shoulder because everyone's down on us because we lost to Michigan. You got to prepare for that version of Ohio State and hope that you get the other one. But I think, considering it's Tennessee, things rarely go easy. And to plan in best case scenario for Tennessee, it seems like I would expect that version of Ohio State to show up, just like we said Carson Beck would have the game of his life against the Vols, and he pretty much did. Best game of the season. It's just kind of one of those things where it's like, of course, they're going to play well against Tennessee, and you just have to go find a way to play better and get that win on the road. And I will say to your point about Josh Heupel, though, if he wins this game, I think that gives him a huge boost as a coach. But even outside of that, just making the playoff, especially with Kalen DeBoer not making it in his first year in the SEC, Lane Kiffin not making it, Eli Drinkwitz not making it, Shane Bieber not making it, Brian Kelly not making it. All those were teams that were also mentioned in the playoff conversation ahead of the season from the SEC. And if you listen to a lot of predictions, it was Ole Miss, it was Missouri, it was even some LSU getting the benefit of the doubt over Tennessee. Tennessee was kind of like this dark horse candidate to make the playoff in the eyes of maybe some national people. Now it's you, Kirby Smart, and Sarkisian, if you're Heupel. I mean, you've separated yourself now from a group that includes Kiffin, Drinkwitz, Beamer. Now that's a group by itself. And no, you're not in that Kirby Smart, Dabo Sweeney group yet, but you're in the Sark group. You're in the DeBoer group. You're in that group of coaches that proves they can make it to the playoff because, DeBoer did with Washington. I think that's huge. I don't think that's something that should be overlooked at all. And I think that can really benefit Tennessee in recruiting down the road. Win or lose this Ohio State game. If you lose this Ohio State game on the road in Columbus at night, it's going to suck. It's going to be a tough loss. I don't know how long it'll take Heupel and his staff and his players to get over it, but it'll be excusable, right? Or not even excusable. It'll be understandable. That this isn't like a must-win game for your legacy or anything. Getting to the playoff with a redshirt freshman quarterback was always the goal. Go win the thing. Yeah. I mean, that's the mindset, but anything from here is kind of a bonus, it feels like.
Yeah, I mean, a good piece of this is that you're essentially just playing with house money. Nobody's going to expect you to win this game. And already Steven said it in the comments here. He said, we're opening as a 7-point underdog. Fair or a little high? I think that's fair. That's what I would have predicted. I would have predicted 6 to 8, somewhere in there as Ohio State as the favorite. I mean, after that showing against Michigan and knowing Tennessee's strength on defense, I don't know that I would predict that Ohio State's going to just run this thing up, even if they do win. But yeah, that's probably about right. You're not going to be a favorite. Everybody's going to pick Ohio State to win this game. And so to me, this is all going to be about playing to your strengths, making sure that Dylan Sampson is as healthy as possible. Because I think if he has a big day on the ground, that's how you win. You win this game. That exact way. You have a market advantage at the running back position. Ohio State has Jeremiah Smith. Like, you don't have a Jeremiah Smith on your team. Now, at the same time, I think your quarterback is better than Will Howard, but you don't have that go-to guy on the outside. They do, but you have that go-to guy in your backfield. And he's the SEC Player of the Year, according to USA Today this week. And that's who you have in your arsenal. And he has 3 weeks, I guess 2 weeks now, to get healthy. And it's disappointing to not get that home game. But if it's going to be an away game, this is a very cool one because of just what it would mean if you win this thing. Like, yeah, you're rewarded by going and playing Oregon, which is exciting in a whole other way, and I think would be a cool game. But it's just like winning this game, even if you don't win the national championship, winning this game would just be...
It'd be huge.
Absolute. Oh, it would be so sweet. Yeah, and I mean that. And as I said earlier in the show, it's not like there's some big rivalry connection or anything. Your entire history, you played Ohio State one time, but it's just symbolically where you'd be ending the Ryan Day era there. You would be supplanting yourself as, Tennessee is the team that can win playoff games even when they're on the road and it's going to be cold. I think, the forecast like 35 degrees or something, and it's going to be a night game. And supplanting yourself there symbolically would be huge. And maybe this is what I was talking about earlier. This is the type of game that you have to win to get that brand prestige, to where people give you that benefit of the doubt, where it's like, okay, does Tennessee get the home game or does X get the home game? And you're the team that gets the home game when you have an equivalent resume. And that's this could take you there. I do think it's cool. I've seen a few Alabama fans in these comments saying, hey, it's there was one just a second ago. Yeah, Jay Smith said, props to Tennessee, go take care of business. I will say it also works in Tennessee's advantage. You're gonna have a little bit of like that night, Tennessee is like America's team, where they're like, screw Ohio State. It's hilarious when they lose. And so that's always nice too. Doesn't mean a whole lot for the play on the field, but it's always fun.
Scott mentioned here in the comments that other than Vols versus Buckeyes in the first round, these other first round games aren't great. That's true. That's by far the best matchup in the first round. And if you're not an Ohio State or Tennessee fan who will be, anxiety ridden that whole weekend or that whole Saturday, and you're just looking at these games to enjoy as a college football fan, that's by far the most compelling and exciting matchup, I think, because you got like Notre Dame, Indiana is not going to move the needle that much, I don't guess, maybe in the state of Indiana. Texas, Clemson doesn't feel like it feels a little lackluster with Clemson ending the regular season the way they did and Texas coming off a loss. And then Penn State SMU is an odd one, really. I don't know what will happen in that game, but it doesn't feel like either one of those teams are going to be the ones to compete for the national championship. The Tennessee, Ohio State, the Vols, going to the Horseshoe, playing on the road at night in Columbus. That's the kind of matchup I feel like the committee wanted. And I like that had to play into this decision just a little bit to seed them the way they did. I know they claim that they don't look at the bracket when they're ranking teams, but that's nonsense. I think if you want to give Ohio State the home game there at the coin flip because of their wins against Penn State, Indiana, you got to live with it. That's the decision the committee made. But I think the matchup between Ohio State and Tennessee, either way, was one that they really wanted to get. And when it was close to working out, I don't think they were going to risk losing that. I think that's why you didn't see Penn State fall further than they did. I think it's why you saw Texas stay where they were, to help preserve at least that one kind of marquee matchup.
I was trying to think exactly where we should go next, because I don't want to preview this game yet. Obviously, we gotta save some for later. But I think you can tell if you're listening. I think Tennessee's chance in this game is as good as it's gonna be. Playing with house money, I think the matchup is pretty decent. In fact, I might even like it more than, Penn State was sort of the other option here. I might like it a little bit more than having to play at Penn State, because Penn State, extremely hostile road environment. They don't have the coaching.
That Penn State environment's tougher than the Ohio State, I think.
It's nasty. Yeah, it's nasty.
Both are tough.
And they have that home environment. They don't have the coaching controversy going on and kind of just the uneasy feeling and all of that thing. And then their best player is a tight end, which, if you have any weakness you would pick out for Tennessee's defense, it would be a tight end over the middle, just catching a ball on 3rd and 6. So I
James
think
Franklin, Tennessee, Franklin versus Vols would have been a fun storyline.
That is true.
Time at Vanderbilt and some of the poking him and Derek Dooley did back and forth with each other.
Oh God, I will never forget I don't remember the exact game that it was. I think it was the jump pass, the Vandy jump pass they had that quarterback that was from like Maryville or something. Jump pass, Patton Robinette. Trying to think, Patton Robinette jump pass in the end zone to beat Tennessee. I was in the student section, and James Franklin came over and did the Vandy V like right in our faces.
That was 2013.
2013.
That was a cold, windy game.
Yes,
I was at that one too. It was rough.
Yeah, I will always hate James Franklin for that, and also our entire coaching staff from that team. But
that was the go to a bowl game too.
Yes, onward and upward. You disposed of Vandy relatively easily this season. That's great. To make a playoff, that's awesome. But like I said, I don't want to preview this game. So let's go through sort of the path and everything else surrounding Tennessee here. If you wanted to flesh it all the way out, if we can start here, I mean, do you think, given the circumstances with the crappy setup, we could talk circles around the fact that how they did this with the auto qualifiers is dumb. I think everybody knows that. They were saying it on the broadcast. It's stupid. But you have what? Yeah, and I think it's going to change next year. They'll change that, of course. It's so bad that they had to change it. Again, I said, the fact that Oregon gets the short end of the stick after beating Penn State, it's all very stupid. But do you think, given the circumstances, this is the best setup that it could have been? And what matchups stick out to you out of what's left outside of the Tennessee game?
Sorry, say that one more time. I was looking through the little notification that popped up there.
Oh, okay. No,
too many things going on
from the game. From the games that are left, do you feel like they quote unquote got it right? I guess. And what games pop out at you as like, oh, that's an interesting one. That's an interesting path that they might have to take.
Well, I think, like you said, the Oregon deal is very strange. The fact that you are the number 1 seed and then you end up with this possibly really tough path, it doesn't make a lot of sense that played out that way. And then from Tennessee's vantage too, you feel like you would have been better off being where SMU's at, right? I mean, that would have, or maybe Clemson, either one. Like, yeah, you still have to go play on the road. You play Texas, Penn State. Still not easy games. Like, all these games are going to be tough, but you don't have to go play the number 1 team in the country if you do win that game. I don't understand why they don't reseed it and just completely start over. Once you get to the quarterfinals, that would just make too much sense. I feel like I don't even know how they thought that out to begin with. But if you're looking at, are you asking me like who has the best path or the easiest path to a championship here?
Yeah, or just, like, where do you think it's going? What? Because it feels like, I mean, at first glance, like, it's going to be Georgia in the championship game, right?
Yeah,
like,
it feels that way.
That makes the most sense.
And we'll have to see how the quarterback situation plays out too. Like, how hurt is Carson Beck? Yes, they had their backup quarterback in against Texas. That was a weird game. If you watch that game, neither team looked that great at all.
Is that actually an upgrade going to their back?
Maybe, but in those, we see it all the time. These backup quarterbacks come in and they flash for a half, and then once they have to be the long-term starter, you game plan for them a little bit. You try to install a game plan for them. They're not just out there. There's a little bit of pressure. It doesn't always play out the way you saw it, maybe when they first came into the game. So I think everybody's like, yeah, Georgia still won that game. They look pretty good. Maybe he even looked better. I still think it's a question mark because there's not a big body of work there. You're talking about one half of football against a Texas team that didn't really play that well. Quinn Ewers didn't play that well. Though Arch Manning in that game, which I think a lot of people felt like, why not? I mean, he's probably your better quarterback at this point. Every time he comes into a game, it seems like good things happen and they put points on the board.
Yeah.
So I don't know with Georgia. I mean, it feels that way. Like they're just inevitable at this point. But they've played some not great football lately. I don't think it's an automatic. And the way Georgia Tech took them down to the wire. Why don't we think that? So who would they play? They would play the 7-10 winner
in Indiana, Notre Dame, and then if they beat that team, SMU, Penn State, or Boise State.
It's a favorable path for Georgia for sure, but you've looked not good a couple of times this year, and that Georgia Tech team is not a playoff team and almost beat you in Athens. Should have beat you in Athens. Do we think that Notre Dame, a team that we really don't know how good they are? I mean, they lost to Northern Illinois, but they've won some other games convincingly against teams they should have beat convincingly. Can they go beat Georgia? I mean, I don't think that's a crazy thought at all. I think this thing is as wide open as ever, and I think the fact that Penn State played Oregon so close in the Big Ten championship, much closer than I expected, just shows you how wide open this thing is. Clemson could be the last team standing at this point, and I don't expect that, but it would not be like this shocking, unbelievable result just based on some of the games that we've seen lost this season. When you're losing games to Northern Illinois, Tennessee to Arkansas. I mean, Ole Miss lost to Kentucky. I know Ole Miss isn't in it, but they beat Georgia and they lost at home against a really bad Kentucky team. I mean, it feels like one of those seasons where anyone can lose to anyone. So while Oregon and Georgia are the clear favorites, moving forward because they're the best teams to get the benefit of the bye over, Boise State and Arizona State. I don't think any of us expect them to be a factor in the finals. Those two teams could probably lose to any of these other teams in the top 12, and nobody would be surprised.
Mike Urbanek in the comments, he does open a spot for me to do some self-promotion here. He said, are you guys on YouTube as well? I'm looking to watch UT content this week. Funny you should ask. Yes, we are on YouTube. Go to the A to Z Sports Tennessee Volunteers YouTube channel, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and we have our show, and we have it's Lucas Panzica who does our weekly kind of explainer videos is how I've been saying it. And yeah, so go subscribe there. We appreciate it. It's hard to get over the setup because it is, Arizona State getting a bye, Boise State getting a bye is so stupid that it's difficult to get around that. Oregon being punished for winning, sort of being punished for winning the Big Ten championship. There's so much idiocy that happened because of the way that it's set up. It's hard to get over that.
Oregon's the only team that really deserves a bye. Ultimately.
Seriously, truly. They are the only team that has in every single game all season long looked worth a crap. Everybody else has had a game where just the wheels fly off. Universally. Go down through here. I guess Boise State technically also, except they've had games where, they almost lost to some of these snoozer teams in the Mountain West and some of those. But Georgia gets smacked around by Ole Miss. They lose to Alabama. Notre Dame, obviously, NIU. Indiana gets throttled by Ohio State. SMU loses to BYU. Penn State, I guess, technically, their one was Ohio State. They took care of business in essentially all other ways. But still, that's the game that James Franklin can never win, and he still never won it. Tennessee with Arkansas, Ohio State with Michigan. Texas, another one where they
didn't have any games on their schedule that they really had to go. Even Penn State, I feel like Penn State has you could have made a case for Penn State to be below Tennessee, and you can make a case for Penn State to be above Texas. The whole thing's crazy. It's like flip a coin, pitch a scenario. They all have arguments you can make for them.
Yeah, it is just a ton of flawed teams, and then Oregon. And at the same time, I look at Oregon and I go, you put them on a neutral field with Georgia right now, I'm probably betting on Georgia. No offense to anybody, but Kirby Smart, been there, done that, won a couple championships. He has the more talented roster. I would say this, just my general feeling on Dan Lanning and how good of a coach I think he is. I do think Oregon would have the coaching advantage there. Georgia has Mike Bobo at offensive coordinator, which I think Georgia fans wish that wasn't the case. Man, Lanning, is there a better motivator in sports? Yeah. Period. The guy's ridiculous. And so they are really the only team that deserves that bye. And somebody just said it in the comments. Oh, where did it go? Here it is. Charlie, he says, you just got to beat Ohio State, Oregon, Texas, and Georgia. That's it. Nice and easy.
Pretty much.
Yeah. But it was never going to be completely easy. Even if you had the easiest path to the national championship, you were always going to have to go through a Georgia or an Oregon. It was always going to be. That's the way it is with the NCAA tournament. Yes, you can end up with an easier path where you're playing a Loyola Chicago or whoever ends up making it to those deeper rounds. But in the end, you're going to play UConn.
Yeah. And how many times have we seen Tennessee blow the easy path?
Yeah.
In college
Don't bring it up.
There's no guarantee. Look, if you go host Indiana, that's a game I think Tennessee would win. but there's no guarantee that they would win that game. I mean, they could play a bad game like they have at times this year offensively and just not stop Indiana and lose. I mean, that's true of pretty much every team in this bracket. I mean, that's kind of what we were talking about a second ago, as far as there being so much parity and nobody really earning buys and stuff. But there is no easy path. That's why when I see some of the 5-12 talk and the position Texas is in or Penn State, yeah, it looks good on paper, but you still got to go win a game against a pretty good team and hope that you advance. Everybody's going to show up to play in this thing. Everybody's got a shot because of the way this season is gone. I think everybody feels like they could be the team that gets hot and wins 4 in a row or 3 in a row if you're in the top 4. I don't think there's a easy path at all in this thing.
There isn't, even for Georgia. Eventually, they're going to have to play the team that makes the final, or whatever it might be. So we'll finish with just a little more playoff talk. I do also want to mention Tennessee basketball. Tomorrow is going to be your number 1 team in America. Lest we forget, Tennessee football's in the playoff, and the basketball team is, no big deal, just the number 1 team in America. But we'll finish with that.
And the Lady Vols beat Iowa. Let's not leave that out.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, we got to mention that too. Lady Vols undefeated, looking like the real deal. But we'll finish with that after I tell you about Farm Bureau Health Plans. Farm Bureau Health Plans have been serving Tennesseans for over 75 years. Some has changed in Tennessee over the years, but some has stayed the same. Farm Bureau has always valued personal relationships, especially when it comes to good health and good service. Plan on Farm Bureau Health Plans for health, dental, and vision. For better coverage, better rates, and better service, go to fbhp.com/ATOZ or walk into one of their 200 plus locations across the state. That is fbhp.com/ATOZ. Farm Bureau Health Plans. Always a big shout out to them. Longtime sponsor. All right. So with the playoff, I don't know how much I want to actually ask you, but I will say, do you truly, in your heart of hearts, Zach, you think Tennessee has it in them to win this Ohio State game again, with the mythos of Heupel having trouble on the road, but also Ohio State, going through the ringer with their coach blowing it at every turn? Are you feeling decent about this?
Yeah. I mean, hey, you're in the playoff with a chance to go win. You've earned this spot, and based on the way the season ended for both teams, Ohio State with that rough loss against Michigan, all the questions. Tennessee, that win against Vanderbilt, the way it started, and then to come back and respond the way they did, I feel like that was their best stretch of football this season, in the most pressure-packed situation they had faced all season. They knew if they lost to Georgia, they still had a chance. A couple things had to go their way, but they knew they'd have a pretty good chance as long as they won out, and they did. So I think you've got a little bit of momentum. Now, Eric in the comments did mention earlier he's a little worried about the layoff potentially, because you had some momentum going, and this is going to be, 3 weeks or 3 weeks without playing a football game for Tennessee before you go into this, do or die, win or go home game. Biggest game for Tennessee since 1999, early 99, playing in the 98 championship game. This is the biggest game for the program since then. How does that layoff affect them? Ohio State has to deal with the same thing, though. So that kind of cancels each other out, I think. We'll see, how they pick up. If they go out and they execute, though, the way that they did against Vanderbilt, if Nico's confident and he's playing his game the way he was against Vanderbilt, not overthinking it, then I think they have a very good chance to go out and win. You got to get pressure. You can't do like you did, against Georgia, where you're not getting any pressure on Carson Beck and you just let him sit back there and do whatever he wants. Got to get pressure. You're going to give up a few quarterback runs or a few random third down screen passes on 3rd and 15. It's almost inevitable that that's going to happen when you pressure the way Tennessee does. Sometimes one just gets away. But for the most part, you're going to have to generate some consistent pressure, execute on offense. Like you said earlier, get the running game going. If you can run the ball with Dylan Sampson, that just opens everything else up, and you're kind of able to do what you want. And as far as playing on the road at night, I think that game in Athens really, even though you lost that game, it's going to be a huge benefit to this whole team having played in that environment just a few weeks ago, playing well at times. You lost that game not because of the crowd. I mean, that was a factor, but there wasn't a bunch of pre-snap penalties like there was in 2022 in Athens. You had a few moments, but it wasn't the same. Like they operated their offense, they just didn't execute. Georgia did. Georgia won the line of scrimmage. That's what that game ultimately boiled down to. Take care of those details, and you've definitely got a chance. But you can't turn the ball over, obviously, and you cannot have these long drives like you did against Georgia in that one situation where you have the ball for 6 or 7 minutes and you don't score. You got to score touchdowns in the red zone too. So, not groundbreaking analysis there, but it really does come down to those things.
It's as it has all season. This team goes as Dylan Sampson goes. Nico is getting better by the week, it seems. And you made it through the season with him healthy to this point, which is awesome. Dylan Sampson needs to get right. He was a little banged up after that Vandy game. Dante Thornton does. But
Eric brings up a good point there, too. Dylan Sampson's got to hang on to the ball.
Yes, please.
MVP of the team, SEC Player of the Year, all this stuff. But, ball security's been an issue. 4 fumbles lost in big games. You cannot do that. You cannot waste an opportunity in this game. It's just you're gonna have a really hard time coming back from that if you're turning the ball over, especially like on your opponent's side of the field. And that's just you can't do it.
Yes, that is not an option. You have to play clean. You have to play clean. So a couple of false starts is understandable in a road environment like that, and they can be impactful, but I'm not gonna rake you over every coal for that. But yes, a fumble. I mean, and it's been in just the big, when you already gave up a touchdown against Vandy, and you're like, that's the last thing that you can do is fumble the ball, and he does it at Georgia. It's like, dog, you are our best player. Hang on to the football. So that is definitely key. But I don't know. This is just we've had Big Ten Jeff's been in the comments being annoying everybody. And he was like, why are you ignoring my comments? Well, Jeff, you're not saying anything constructive. Like, you're not coming in and you're not being like, oh, here, it's a fun matchup with Jermon McCoy and Jeremiah Smith. You're just being like, Charlie is crying because of what? No, you can think that I'm crying about this, and it is annoying, just because of the history of everything that's happened with Tennessee. Like, it is annoying. It's annoying for Ohio State too. Frankly, you should be annoyed that the path is us and then Oregon for you because of these auto qualifiers and things. That's a very valid thing.
Ohio State's better than some of the teams in front of them. Yes, no doubt.
Like, you could have been moved around and been playing like SMU and instead, you're being an idiot. Stop it. But I honestly, at the end of the day, I'm sure Ohio State fans would want Tennessee fans to be like, oh no, we have to go to Ohio State and do it. But I think about this. Yes, it would have been amazing to play at Neyland, and I would be significantly more confident in Tennessee's ability to win.
Oh yeah.
But I also think about the opportunity that you have here and what we've been saying about, the whole shakiness of Ryan Day and Tennessee's strength compared to Ohio State's strengths and how all of this works out. I'm excited about this. Genuinely, really excited. Obviously, because you're in the playoff and you have a shot at winning a national championship if you play your best football. But this is just one of those things. Exactly like I said with the Titans when they ended Tom Brady's time in New England. Like, that's such an exciting opportunity. Were the odds against the Titans in that spot? 100%. You're playing the GOAT in his stadium in the playoffs where he's been so good his entire career. But they walked in and they won that game. And here's your shot to do something very similar in, the Ryan Day era in Ohio State. Get a legendary victory, a victory that even if you don't win a national championship, Tennessee fans are going to be talking about. It's sort of akin to that 22 Alabama game that broke that giant streak. Like, this is getting you back to full-blown, just truly relevant national competitor status. And you have a chance to just put your foot down, and you're playing with house money in that spot. Like, even if you're playing at home, there would almost be a little bit of pressure.
Yeah.
to say like, oh, well, you're playing in Neyland and Josh Heupel's been undefeated in Neyland outside of one loss to Georgia for 2 full years and all of this stuff. And you'd be like, okay, well, we got to beat Ohio State and this is our shot. And now, your back's not against any kind of wall. You're just like, hey, let's go out there, take advantage of the situation that we've been given this awesome opportunity. And I'm excited about it. And stylistically, I like the matchup with Ohio State also. So, hey, let's go win this thing. That's what I'll say. And leave it there for now. Obviously, in the next episode, we'll actually preview the game and get into that. I was looking at the weather. Supposed to be high of, as of right now, it's a really long way out to be predicting the weather's sunny and 42 degrees. But then it's a night game.
Yeah, but I don't think it'll be sunny during that game.
That's true. It's not that day. The high that day, 42. The low, 26 as of right now. So you're probably talking a 35 down towards 30 degrees by the end of the game. It's going to be cold.
Yeah.
It's going to be a cold game. But
yeah,
hopefully, as long as it's not paired with rain,
and
there's
that would be
some elements like that
for everyone.
Yeah, and you're getting into snow territory at those temperatures. But hey, I love this spot.
It's definitely.
I'm hyped.
It's definitely a huge opportunity. Tennessee has not won that huge road game yet under Heupel, and they've had some opportunities. You've been to the Swamp now a couple times. You've been to Tuscaloosa. You've been to Athens. You've unfortunately been to Columbia. There's been some tough road games where they've played. They won that game against Oklahoma at night in an emotional game, and you do recognize that as a big win just because of what all was involved. But that wasn't a great Oklahoma team at all. So you haven't beat a great team on the road yet under Heupel, and this is a huge chance in the biggest spot possible. And I think you brought up a good point. There is a little bit less pressure because you're not at home. You lose a home playoff game, that's pretty deflating. Yeah. You lose on the road in Columbus as the lower seed. It's going to hurt for Tennessee fans, and I'm sure there will be some Tennessee fans that really do some complaining over it. But, I mean, in the eyes of the seeding, it would play out as expected type deal. So it really should be a lower pressure situation for Tennessee. And I think there's a lot of pressure on Ryan Day. I mean, you pretty much almost have to win this game maybe to keep your job. I don't know if they would actually fire him if they lose this, only because it would be so late in the coaching cycle. And maybe we see the coaching cycle change. Maybe you see some movement among playoff teams. I don't know. I don't know how that would work. Maybe somebody from the NFL. There's a lot of different scenarios that could play out there. Ultimately, I think I'd be a little surprised just because while he's had some trouble against Michigan and hasn't won a national championship, he's had Ohio State in position to win championships and to compete for championships. And you fire a guy like that, there is no guarantee that the next guy's going to get you there. And LSU is a perfect example of that. I've long thought LSU might be the best job in college football because recruiting is so easy there, or should be so easy there. And after Nick Saban, you saw two coaches that got fired by LSU win national championships, Les Miles and Ed Orgeron, both of which have not done anything since getting fired at LSU. Miles had a little cup of coffee there with Kansas, and it went terribly. There's no guarantee that you're going to walk into a situation where you get a coach that can get you to where Ryan Day's got you. So I don't know if that would be smart on their part. Different conversation, but long way to say there's a lot of pressure on that guy going into this game.
Yeah, there's a bunch of different angles of that. The biggest one being who could you get to replace him, but it's felt like with that guy the entire time is just born with a silver spoon in his mouth.
And he might want out of it. I don't know.
At a certain point, I do wonder if he goes, hey, this North Carolina job's open or something like that. I don't know about North Carolina itself, but apparently Bill Belichick's going to be taking that job or something.
Who knows? It's a weird sport these days.
Go from one really old, washed-up guy to another. But I just think that just a clean start for everybody just would have to feel so much better there. You definitely make good points. But, man, if you lose to Tennessee in this spot after that embarrassment against Michigan, that's – whew. And you've won nothing of significance for 5 years now, basically. Like, I don't know. I do see Chilmo doing my job for me. I appreciate it. He said, hit the like button. Please do it. Please do hit the like button. I appreciate that. Everybody in the comments has been awesome. We just there's so much to talk about that we just haven't run through all the comments with everybody. But that's it. We'll approach the Tennessee Ohio State game next week. Get a little more in depth on it. Kind of get into it. We can't just do everything today. So let's finish with this tomorrow. Tuesday. Sorry, because we're doing the show on Sunday, not Monday, like we normally would. Tuesday, Tennessee goes to Madison Square Garden to play basketball against Miami, and they will almost certainly be the number one team in America when they show up there. Miami has lost 6 straight games, including games to Charleston Southern and Drake. So things not going so hot for Miami. Should be a pretty comprehensive win, I would expect. But that exciting times for them. You mentioned it a second ago. Exciting times for the Lady Vols. They find the Lady Vols with new coach Kim. Finally played 2 real games this week. Beat Florida State. Beat number 15 Iowa, and really until the very end of the game, they were running Florida State out of the gym. They were up by 20 at one point in that game. Ended up giving up a lot of the lead, but still, yeah, exciting times for basketball too. I just don't want to leave them out. But you do. Tennessee does, in fact, it's under the radar, have the number one team in America in basketball. So that's great.
It was some crazy stat that since Tennessee's lost in the NCAA tournament or something. I mean, the whole university, or since the summer, I can't remember. The basketball team, the football team, and the baseball teams lost 1 game since a certain date, or 3 games, I guess you count the football game. Something crazy. They've lost a very few amount of games at this point, with Tennessee's basketball team and the Lady Vols not losing, and Tennessee going undefeated at home. Maybe it's that in Knoxville or something that they haven't lost since a game in one of those sports since back in the summer. It's a pretty crazy run right now for the university, and that's you got to credit Danny White. You got to credit Danny White. I mean, it's all turned around. That guy at this point is a coaching search savant, because he always seems to make the right hire everywhere he's been. And this Lady Vols hire now, with the start that Caldwell's got off to, while expecting a child, by the way, which just adds even more craziness and stress to your life. Just it's a incredible job she's done so far, and it's definitely exciting times for Lady Vols.
It really is, and I mean, we can just hop right from whenever this football season ends. Hopefully not on the 21st, but whenever it does, we can hop straight from there into a really exciting, not just men's basketball, but women's basketball season, and then baseball's right behind that in February. So what a time to be a Tennessee fan. Oh, and Eric brings this up. You and me talked about this week, Zach. Tennessee won the Microsoft Excel National Championship this week also.
Everything's cool.
Absolutely. The everything school, for sure. And I would suggest this, and this is what I sent to you, Zach. The live stream of the Microsoft Excel Championship is on YouTube. And there's I believe, an AI generated, at least it sounds AI generated, song at the beginning of the live stream, and it is one of the funniest and most catchy things that you will hear. I'll just leave that open. Go find it. Please go find it, and it will be stuck in your head for the rest of the day. I guarantee it. So there's that. Go Vols, even in the Microsoft Excel World Championship. Anything else for the folks at home, Zach, before you bounce?
No, I think that should cover it. We did about all the complaining we can do about the seeding. Now it's all about just go win the game. Just find a way. It won't be easy. Yep. Find a way.
You have gotten the draw that you have. I mean, we do the same song and dance every year with the basketball tournament, the NCAA tournament. Why does Tennessee have to play? You can do it all you want, but your road's not going to change. It is what it is now.
And look, Josh Heupel's not complaining about it at this point. He hasn't said anything publicly about politicking for a home game. Said that it'd be great to have one, but we'll play who we play, when we play, where we play. That's out of their control.
And can we say this? One of the funniest, unintended consequences of the playoff, and I don't think I saw this one coming at all, is these coaches at the bottom end of the bracket that are there on the bubble just going out and debasing themselves. And just, I mean, Lane Kiffin, his Twitter timeline is one of the saddest things that I've seen in college coaching in quite a while right now. I mean, just tweeting things where you're just like, dude, you're a pretty good football team. Like, just, it's okay. You blew it, but like,
yeah. In his defense, though,
down.
and I think they did the right thing by leaving Ole Miss out, by leaving Alabama out. If you got to win 10 games to get in a 12-team playoff. Come on, like I don't care what conference you're in. If you lose to Kentucky, you lose to Vanderbilt, it's over. It's done, right? But the whole conversation the last 2 weeks has focused on, is Alabama deserving of that last spot over SMU, Clemson, Miami, whoever. It hasn't been Ole Miss, and Ole Miss has the same resume. Maybe they might even have a better, argument to make the playoff. It's at least close. It's at least a conversation, and they beat Georgia. So that's the one thing that Alabama has that's this huge achievement, which, as Lane Kiffin said, was kind of a miracle half of football that Alabama played, where Jalen Milroe and then they took a miracle catch from Ryan Williams once Georgia figured out what was going on and was probably going to win that game if not for that insane play by him. But that's what's propping up Alabama as a contender this whole time. Ole Miss didn't get that same benefit of the doubt. So in the sense that you feel like Tennessee gets on the short end of the stick at times, I think that's how Kiffin feels in that situation. But you didn't deserve to get in, neither did Alabama. So just stop the complaining and beat Kentucky at home, and you're in. It's that simple.
I mean, Ben Hall really says it here. I agree with this. He said Lane's tweets are why he's never going to be in the playoff. His mindset is wrong. I agree. I mean, he is, the amount that he tweets is like, how many tweets do you see from Kirby Smart? The answer is 0. He doesn't even have a Twitter account. Heupel does not run his own Twitter account. And that's just not something that you see from elite coaches, is just that whole Beamer too. I mean, I think the same thing with Beamer, where you just go, you're worried about the wrong things. Like maybe get in there and start looking at tape instead of crying on Twitter. But hey, far be it from me to talk down to them, except I am going to talk down to them, because you know who's in the playoff and who's not? Tennessee's in the playoff and you're not in the playoff. So go ahead and cry about it. All right. And on that note,
we'll do that victory lap for the next 2 weeks.
Exactly. Minimum. Yeah. I mean, God forbid we beat Ohio State at Ohio State. It's just going to get that much worse.
Oh, yeah.
Charlie Burris, Zach Reagan, thank you to everybody who watched. We had Michigan fans in here. We had Alabama fans in here. Of course, freaking Ohio State fans. We have those on the regular for some reason watching this show. But as always, incredibly fun. Always a great time. Go A to Z Sports Tennessee Volunteers YouTube channel. Watch Lucas Panzica's videos. They've been popping off, like, honestly, doing pretty nice little numbers there. So go have a good time with us on YouTube. That's it, I think. We will talk to y'all next week.
See you guys later.